The last delivery notification came through at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. You probably didn't think much about it at the time. Most people don't, because the assumption underneath modern life is quiet, invisible, and completely untested. Food will come. It always has, until the night it doesn't. The average urban household in the US or UK holds roughly 3 to 5 days of usable food, not 3 to 5 days of real meals, 3 to 5 days of whatever happens to be in the cupboard right now. That distinction matters more than most people realize when the system that restocks everything simply stops moving. Modern grocery supply chains run on what's called just-in-time delivery. Stores don't hold large reserves. They receive constant, frequent shipments, sometimes daily, to keep shelves stocked. A disruption doesn't have to be catastrophic to break that rhythm. A severe weather event, a fuel shortage, a logistics strike, or a regional infrastructure failure can stall it within 24 to 48 hours. And when that happens, the shelves don't empty slowly. They go fast. Bread, canned goods, water, batteries, often within a few hours of public awareness. Day one feels manageable. You have what's in your kitchen. You make do. Pasta, eggs, some frozen vegetables, maybe half a bag of rice you've been ignoring for months. The body isn't under any real stress yet. Blood glucose is stable, mood is normal. The main feeling on day one is mild inconvenience, not danger. That's also where the first misread usually happens. People measure their situation by how they feel right now, not by what the next 4 days will actually require. A healthy adult can survive without food for considerably longer than most assume, often 3 weeks or more under calm conditions. But survival without adequate calories is not the same as functioning without adequate calories. By day 2, if caloric intake drops significantly, the body begins shifting its energy strategy. Glycogen stores in the liver and muscles start depleting. The body begins pulling from fat reserves. That transition is not immediately dramatic, but it's not invisible either. Mild fatigue sets in. Concentration softens. Decision-making takes slightly more effort than usual. Most people don't identify these early symptoms as food-related. They chalk it up to stress, poor sleep, or anxiety about the situation. That misattribution can delay action at exactly the moment when calm, clear decisions matter most. The psychological pressure in the background is doing its own work by this point. Not knowing when the disruption will end changes how the brain processes the remaining food. Rationing feels abstract until you're actually staring at what's left and trying to make it stretch. Water is a separate and more urgent problem than food in almost every short-term disruption scenario. The body can tolerate food scarcity for days. It cannot tolerate water scarcity for more than 2 to 3 days without serious physiological consequences. If tap water becomes unavailable, which can happen during infrastructure failures, the timeline compresses significantly. Most households are not holding meaningful water reserves. A few bottles in the fridge maybe. Day 3 without adequate hydration produces headache, reduced urine output, dry mouth, and increasing mental fog. These are not mild discomforts. They are signs that the body's core systems are starting to work harder to compensate. Physical tasks that felt normal 2 days earlier now feel heavier. Climbing stairs, carrying things, thinking clearly under uncertainty. The body is conserving. Metabolism slows slightly. Core temperature regulation becomes less efficient. By day 4, the emotional landscape shifts in a way that catches most people off guard. It's not dramatic collapse. It's quieter than that. A kind of narrowing. Things that felt manageable on day 1 now feel heavier, slower, more uncertain. Irritability increases. Small frustrations land harder than they should. This isn't weakness. It's brain chemistry responding to reduced glucose and elevated cortisol. The stress hormone load from uncertainty compounds the physical depletion in ways that aren't always easy to separate. People in prolonged food disruptions often describe a strange flattening of motivation. Not panic, just heaviness. Getting up feels like more effort. Planning feels harder. The future feels less accessible somehow. That psychological compression is real, and it has consequences for decision quality at exactly the wrong time. Someone who needed to act on day 2, find alternative food sources, reach a family member, leave the area, may now feel too depleted to act effectively. The window for calm, rational problem solving doesn't stay open indefinitely. And this is where preparation, or the absence of it, becomes the actual story. Not dramatic survival skills, not wilderness knowledge, just basic household food and water margin. A 7-day food reserve for one person costs very little and takes minimal storage space. Rice, lentils, oats, canned protein, cooking oil. Calorie-dense, long shelf life, no special knowledge required to use. Water storage at roughly 1 gallon per person per day for a minimum of 3 days is the baseline most emergency planners recommend. These are not bunker mentality preparations. They are the same logic as having a spare tire. You don't carry it because you expect a blowout. You carry it because not having one removes your options entirely. The people who navigate short-term disruptions with the least stress are rarely the ones with the most gear. They're the ones who didn't have to make urgent decisions about food and water while already running on empty. Having even 2 extra days of margin changes the psychology of the situation completely. You're not scrambling, you're not rationing desperately, you have enough breathing room to think. And in a disruption scenario, thinking clearly is the resource that matters most. There's also a community dimension that individual preparation rarely considers fully. Neighbors who have nothing become a source of pressure, conflict, or alternatively, cooperation, depending entirely on the social fabric that already existed before the disruption. Communities with existing trust networks, people who already know each other, already share resources in small ways, fare meaningfully better in short disruptions than isolated households. That's documented consistently in post-disaster research, and it's one of the least glamorous but most reliable findings in emergency resilience literature. The disruption scenario doesn't have to be catastrophic to reveal these gaps. A severe winter storm, a regional flooding event, a fuel supply interruption lasting 4 or 5 days. These are not extreme hypotheticals. They happen in developed countries, to ordinary people in ordinary cities, and the experience is almost always the same. The first 24 hours feel manageable, the next 48 feel uncomfortable, and by day 4, the absence of margin becomes very visible. What the body is doing during all of this is responding to scarcity with a system that evolved for a very different world. The hunger signals that feel urgent are not medical emergencies in a healthy adult. They are calibrated for an environment where food required active effort to find. Recognizing that distinction doesn't make the discomfort disappear, but it can prevent panic-driven decisions. Staying warm uses more calories than staying still. Movement accelerates depletion. Rest preserves margin. These are not complicated principles. They are the kind of grounded understanding that changes outcomes. If you're ever in a real disruption, any kind, the advice of local emergency management, community services, and trained responders will always be more reliable than general guidance. Real situations vary. Health conditions, household size, climate, existing infrastructure, these details change everything. What holds across most short-term food disruption scenarios is this. The gap between having 3 days of food and 7 days of food is not just 4 days. It's the difference between making calm decisions and making desperate ones. It's the difference between having options and watching them close. The delivery notification you didn't think about tonight is part of a system with very little redundancy built in. That's not a reason for alarm, it's just a fact worth knowing, and worth doing something small about, while the choice is still easy.